Hello and welcome to Writers and Books Visiting Author Series. My name is Dan Hurd. I'm the Director of Adult Programs. Writers and Books is a nonprofit literary arts center in Rochester, New York. We offer readings, workshops, and literary programming for people of all ages, all currently available online. Our theme for 2021 is taking care. We're celebrating different ways we can take care of ourselves and take care of others this year. You can check out our upcoming schedule at wab.org. Please say hello in the chat and let us know you're there. Feel free to submit questions to the Q&A function. Books are available through our bookstore, &Books. I'll put the link in the chat. We're so happy to have Said Shaiye with us today. First, we'll hear him read, then he'll be in conversation with Hanif Abdurraqib. Hanif Abdurraqib is the best-selling author of A Little Devil in America, Notes in Praise of Black Performance, and the Lenore Marshall Poetry Prize-winning collection, A Fortune for Your Disaster, among others. Said Shaiye is an autistic Somali writer who calls Minneapolis home. He is an MFA candidate and graduate instructor at the University of Minnesota. He has published in Entropy, Diagram, 580 Split, Rigorous, and elsewhere. Are You Borg Now is his debut book. It's an experimental memoir that uses poetry, self-interview, photography, and Star Trek Voyager to analyze a life of trauma. As the writer Kathryn Nuernberger has said, Shaiye is a writer who transforms the pain of alienation into beautifully lyric writing, and from that writing springs a profound faith that one is never really alone. Said, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Dan. I appreciate it.
Sure. I will turn it over to you. Yeah, you can get started.
All right. Hello, everybody. Good evening. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you all's time. Thanks to Writers and Books for having me here. Thank you as well to Hanif Abdurraqib for coming through. And let me, yeah, stupid nervous. Let me just jump into it. Basically, the book Are You Borg Now? The main format of the book is a self-interview that I'm having, a dialogue between myself, my present self, my adult self, and my inner child, or the parts of myself that escaped my body to help my young self survive the various traumas of my past, including growing up in Somalia before the Civil War, going through the refugee camps, growing up in American poverty, etc., and all the cultural classes that come with that, coming to terms with my Blackness in America, third culture stuff. Anyway, I say all that to preface that I'm going to be reading some parts of this. You're going to hear me having basically a conversation with myself. So I'll try to alter my voice a little bit, but for the most part, it's just going to be me having this dialogue with myself. One is me right now, one is baby Said. Why do you write? I'm afraid of what I'll find. Who are you? I thought I was Somali or Somali American or pues nada. What does pues nada mean? Pues nada is a Spanish muletilla, a verbal crutch, something that doesn't necessarily mean anything as such, but as a way of pausing or finishing off a sentence. You feel like a verbal crutch that doesn't necessarily mean anything as such? Yeah, I feel like an extended pause. You feel like the end of a sentence? Yeah, but less complete. So I write. Why do you write? Not for praise. I don't care about that. It makes me uncomfortable, like money. Then why? To discover self? But I'm not comfortable with much of what I discover. It hurts. You do it for the pain then. I don't like pain. I'm already in so much of it all the time, and my stomach hurts all the time. Didn't you do this to yourself last night when you binge ate that junk food? I did, but I made myself forget I was both the cause and victim of my own pain. I don't like it. Then why? Because it's the only thing I've ever known to do. My coffee's getting cold. Why did you order it if not to drink? Because I thought I wanted it. Why do you write if not to make it? Because I thought I wanted to make it. So what do you want? To be happy, to be free of pain. In this life? Never. Well, not totally, but you know, at least in less pain than I'm now in. And how can you reach that goal? I hope to write my way out of pain, but so very often all writing does is bring me more pain. An endless pain cycle, whether you write or not. Well, I guess the pain would be there regardless. I guess the writing uncovers things. And what happens when writing uncovers your pain? Imagine a cut that never healed right. Imagine scar tissue atop the cut. And then I use my imagination with my mush-mouthed words to try and figure out what caused the cut. Is that logical? Commander Tuvok would say no, because the cut is there and how it got there is irrelevant. Are you Borg now? Irrelevant. You will comply. I thought I was making the demands here. Sorry, I forgot the format. Continue. Okay. Are you okay? Some days I am. Most days I'm not so sure. Are you being dramatic? No, I'm in a lot of pain. Why not go to the doctor? Because I have trust issues. They put me on psych meds before and I'm not going back. Why don't you just get married? That's what my parents did and their parents before them, and marriage ain't a quick fix. Damn. Yeah, I know. I'm sorry, I shouldn't talk about them like that. Why not? It's un-Islamic, un-Somali. It's not right. They did the best they could with what they had. You sound like our old therapist right now. Yeah, I miss her. Don't you though? Really do. Never felt so understood. Sometimes I wonder what it would have been like if my parents were therapists. But then again, I've seen children of therapists and they don't have it figured out either. Life is a question mark. Don't you have a new therapist appointment coming up? Yeah, I do. Brother named. I like his name and his face too. Looks safe, reliable. Doesn't black skin cause you comfort? Like you wouldn't believe, questioning voice. Who were you talking to? I was just about to ask you the same thing. Why haven't you dropped out of this MFA program? Because this is all I've ever wanted. At least that's what I tell people. What does this mean to you? Everything. Or so I thought. Well, I mean, never mind. What? There was that white kid from Renton, from Kent. Ran into him on the hill at that Summit Ave block party. It was my first time on that block since I'd gotten mostly sober. He saw me and I tried to avoid talking to him because I knew what he would say, but he was persistent and walked over to me. How you been? All right, you? After the pleasantries, he asked if I still did spoken word, to which I replied no. It took a while for the words to come to my mouth, feeling like mush as my tongue struggled to wrangle them loose from my voice box. I was on lithium because after my last major breakdown, the psych ward doctors decided I was bipolar. Years later, I would find out that I was just autistic with complex PTSD. All they had to go on was my psych ward record because I never did long-term outpatient care. Anyway, my mind was heavy at the time. Lithium slowed me down, something terrible. I hated myself and hoped this would change that for me. I remember my birthday that year on lithium. I walked to the playground with my little sisters and watched them have a blast. Feels so good to be seen by people who don't judge you, who accept you, even when you don't accept yourself. Even when you don't accept yourself. Even when you don't accept yourself. My sheikh has been trying to reach out to me and I've kept a steady distance. I don't know, man. It's so easy for me to be betrayed by people, to feel betrayed by people. Who are these people you're talking about? I'm not even sure. I ask myself questions that I can't answer, and you hope for the answers to present themselves in the form of new questions or something like it. I think I'm forgetting what writing means to me, but I forget that on the daily, and then I remember it. I mean you, keep thinking that what you're writing is not worth anything. Well, yes, I wouldn't keep writing if I didn't think that. So you write from a place of fear. It's a hell of a motivator. Yeah, that's macabre. Different people need to be engaged with the process in different ways. Isn't it time to go pray? It is indeed time to go pray. Who are you talking to, Slim? Myself, and the second voice of my writing, which I'm still not sure where it's coming from or what it represents or who it is. Aren't you the only one here? Yeah, sure. Why not? So then the second voice is just a reflection of your shadow thoughts. I don't know if it's that easy. Explain. I mean, I don't think this is a part of me, but clearly I'm writing your voice, so it must be. So then who are you? If I knew that, I wouldn't be writing. Isn't that selfish? No, because who I am is a representation of who my people are. And my people are suffering, struggling, juggling life between rafts in the sea. Life between rafts in the sea. Life between rafts in the sea. It's me. I'm avoiding the urge to check my phone to see if this girl had texted back. You know how that goes. I came to the coffee shop today because it's been too long since I wrote. I mean, really wrote. I mean, wrote for myself and myself alone. Let it all go. Listen to the wind blow. So, needless to say, in Ohio, I met a girl. I kept telling myself she's the one, if for no other reason than she knows about my diagnosis and hasn't run away yet. But the more she runs away from it, I mean, the more she learns about it, the more she gets hesitant. And I'm not big on convincing people of things. It's hard. It's not easy trying to get married. But I've seen people on meds having kids and going to their psych appointments just fine. If they can make it, why not me? So I keep asking myself if I'm settling or rushing into something, if I'm overlooking things about her personality just to fulfill this fantasy of mine to get married. But I know that I'm tired of being alone. And I know that she's extremely patient and has a good heart. I don't know what more I can ask for in a spouse. Honestly, I have doubts and second thoughts about everything, really. So this shouldn't come as a shock, but I'm hopeful. Despite what all the articles and literature says about trauma and relationships, I don't need that stuff weighing me down. I just got to keep it pushing and hope for the best. I've said that before. Sometimes I feel down, but I hope for the best by picking myself up off the floor, flipping that frown upside down. My natural instinct is to hide from the world and fall into a hole and crawl back out when I've had my fill of pity. I fear that living with someone won't let me do that, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes I write a sentence so strong it forces me to go outside and do push-ups in the cold. It forces energy out of me or into me, and it has to be released. Sometimes I think thoughts so scary that they rob me my breath away. They rob my breath away. Sometimes I think I'll die alone, and then I push that thought out of my head, ask Allah to provide me safety from the curse of shaitan. Sometimes I feel alone, and sometimes it's not a bad thing. Mostly I just like to write. It's been a while since I did some real writing, but wait, Flex, if all of my writing is real, I just don't share it with the world. I heard a story the other day. I think it applies to me. Homeboy said he knows a sheikh, young, speaks all the languages, knows all the major texts, very qualified to lead. Yes, the sheikh keeps it all to himself. He says he's not ready to share it with the world. He still has a few more books to memorize. My friend looks at him and says, "Ya sheikh, if not now, when? Will you just die with this treasure trove in your mind?" I wonder sometimes. I wonder if I'll die. Not if, but when. But wondering doesn't help a problem like that. Only acceptance and forgetting, pushing it out of your mind. Out of your mind. Out of my mind. Pushing it out of my mind. I remember living somewhere between Ballard and I want to say Magnolia. I remember listening to the Strokes back then, Sonic Youth too. I wasn't really into them. I mean, I hadn't grown up listening to them, but I liked them at the time. And I was around people who were more or less appreciated them. I was with an indie crowd. I used to feel ashamed about that. I read Hanif Abdurraqib and he talks proudly about that. So I guess now I feel less ashamed about being a Black former pop punk indie emo fan. Generally speaking, I'm learning that shame has no useful place in my life, but old habits die hard. It's been a long time since I wrote just to enjoy writing for the fun of it. Here I am, coffee in hand, pounding away these sentences. The weight of the words feel like weight being lifted from me. I'm listening to Soma right now by the Strokes. I remember being in Sofa, San Francisco. I remember showing up to the open mics, hoping to spit. Hoping to spit. Look, man, forget all that. I got a girl who cares about me in my life. Never thought the day would come. Someone who won't leave me no matter how hard I try to make her leave. It's a trip. Where I come from, the people I know, they don't speak about their problems. We hold them in until they fester and swell, until they consume us like fire. We let our problems burn like an Usher song. You can see our faces like a Snapchat filter, the gap between fact and fiction. The people I cling to the word someday as a means to a way, a means to survival, a means to make a way. The people I love don't very often know that I love them. And I rarely tell them, even more rarely show them, but they know them. They know. The people who love me have spent a lifetime showing me that they love me, but not always, or maybe never, being able to actually say it. Very rarely. It's not a part of our culture. It's not who we are. We don't speak our demons. We bury them. They eat away at us, dissolve us like bones in a bottle of Coca-Cola. Someday, they say. Someday I'll get my act together. Stop being abusive to my body. Stop treating those I care about like they owe me a debt. Even if they do, someday. I'll get to a place where I don't ask them to repay that day. Someday I'll be okay. We'll all be okay. Oh, someday. No, I ain't wasting no more time. Break. Sometimes I just lay in bed and stare at nothing, feeling like nothing, feeling the nothing weight of my body, feeling like my mind is there but not, feeling like I'm here but somewhere else too. I jump outside and stretch my body because sometimes sentences get stuck between my shoulder blades and need to be shook loose, like a loose shake joint, wrapped between a piece of thin paper. What does that even mean to me anymore? I mean, what am I supposed to do with all that experience? I don't smoke anymore. So what does the knowledge of how to roll the perfect blunt or joint translate to my now sober life? It really doesn't. But I wonder, what can I do with all that old skill? I could go for a run right now. I really need a run. 5 minutes later, I came back. I unwrapped myself in a run, and it was magnificent break. When I first started this project, I wasn't sure what I wanted it to be. In many ways, I still haven't answered that question. I was in a different emotional space when I began. I was in fight or flight mode, struggling to breathe during my first semester in an MFA program. One of the only things keeping me going was not knowing what this project could be. I didn't want to cap it, no self-limitations. It was exciting and fresh and served a purpose for me that I couldn't have gotten in any other way. When my social support network failed to understand what I was going through, this project gave me the legs to walk into a space of breathing, a breath space, a diaphragm unfolding, a stomach unholding. I've also been plagued by a need to write a memoir of trauma, but the memoir is not wanting to be written, and so the need to write it grows stronger. One of my mentors told me that it might be useful to think about the question at the heart of the memoir, and that the question will open the door for the structure of the memory to fall into place. So what's the question? Easy. Who am I? What am I? How am I? I guess I've been so focused on the very act of writing the memoir that I haven't looked at the underlying questions. Why do I need to write this story? Why did I go down the path that I did? Why did I find my way back to writing time and again? What role does writing serve in my wholeness? And how did it let me get there? And faith. What about faith? I often wonder where I would be in this world if not for my faith. I see what's happening to Muslim kids today, and I think back to the worst of my days. In many ways, it would appear that they're headed for the same paths. Only Allah knows what end they'll meet. But from where I'm sitting, I have a combination of remorse for my own past, fear for their future, and by extension, the future of my own children, and a whole bunch of other things. As one who submits to God, to Allah, I feel responsible for the upliftment of my community. I want us to do good, to win. I want all of us to enter heaven, to abstain from sin. But this time in the world is making it very easy to do wrong, very hard to do right. Of course, life wasn't meant to be easy, but still, even after everything I've experienced in my life, I still wonder where I'd be if not for my faith. Living with a chronic mental health condition is no small task, but what choice do I have but to live that life? And where would I be if not for my faith and my community? Who would I be? No one, no thing. That's who, that's what. And I'm out. Peace.
That was great. Thank you for that. Thanks for this book, which I loved a great deal. It's funny, I didn't know, I didn't know whether or not I could read, and I didn't want to read any of my work, but I thought it would be good to read a poem. I wanted to read a poem by Doug Kearney because he's someone who connects both of us, and I've been thinking about Doug this week a lot, and I love his book as well. And it's funny because I think there are only so many Doug poems that I can actually read out loud because he is so unique. But I love this poem, this Prince. I love a Prince poem. Is Doug watching this? Oh no, well, that's more embarrassing. Someone just said Doug is watching this. Well, okay. What up, Doug? I didn't know Doug was watching. I was like, I just love his poems. He's like connecting between us. But I'm gonna read I Want to Be Your Lover. But I know Doug's probably sitting at the house like, this is about to fuck up my poem. And I am, but I love it. So yeah, this is I Want to Be Your Lover by Douglas Kearney. Oh, Farah, Pharaoh, the feather up and off your shoulder, an absence of pressure, but the weight of the guitar and the bass, the synth and the kit, the all that was all you ever wanted to do, the disco video grain like a leopard skin, or baby powder tossed at an afro, someone blowing in your face gently, maybe the 80s you were coursing. You keep changing parts, this one, that, mother and sister too. Was it you wanted as easy as making something not you speak, you spoke it, you say maybe first, if you love, you get loved. The spangle in the air shine before the light shine it. The tips of your hair coming back with their own air. So I'm so excited to talk about the book in its structures, particularly because, it's not a traditional, I don't even know, do you consider it a memoir? I mean, I think that's probably the first question.
In a way, I try to fight calling it that, honestly. I think it's the sum of it makes it a memoir, just because of the sum of topics of my life that are covered. But the way it's done, I don't think it's easy to call it a memoir in that regard.
So the big thing that I wanted to touch on then is the idea of memoir as a memory exercise, because to me, like, that's what, more than like breaking apart genre and breaking apart like book structure, the memoir in its highest form is for me like an exercise in memory. And so one poem can be a memoir, or like a conversation can be a memoir. But this book is especially a memory exercise because the amount of voices that are present in it. And I'm wondering how you honored the consistency in the voice, particularly these conversations you're having between your younger selves, while like a full-grown adult person who doesn't actually have full access to how your younger self would react to you in your full form.
Yeah, that's a good question, man. I'm not sure. I think it was there was this negotiation that was happening in the excavation of the memories. There were these tangentially related memories that kept coming up. And one thing that this structure allowed me to do was to shield myself from diving too deep into a memory. Like, for example, if somebody asked me a question about a certain part of my life, and I'm responding to them, it's very difficult for me to know when my body is telling me like, hey, you're passing like this trauma threshold, and this is getting into like some deep, painful territory, and this is gonna have you laying in bed for 3 days if you don't stop talking about this right now. Because I don't know how to make that stop, that transition. Because I always just want to share and give and just say yes to people. And so like the combination of negotiating this part excavation of memory and part withholding of memory, that allowed me to put up these health barriers for myself, to where if I was responding to something that one of the voices asked me, as I'm responding and I'm typing, my body starts feeling a certain type of way. I start getting that traumatic response feeling, that clenched stomach and all that stuff, throat closing up. And then one of the voices would be like, literally would jump into halfway through my sentence, like, I feel your body tensing up. And that was like, it became like a witness in that way. Helped me like protect me from myself and from like divulging too much.
Yeah, I was also interested in the idea of emotional guardrails when writing about our lives, because I don't know if this book is like, for me, it's not a book that is really rooted in trauma. And I think that maybe this is because of the form it takes, but there's also real moments of pleasure and playfulness in it. And it seemed like, I mean, now that hearing you explain it, that seems accurate, because it does seem like there's some real like emotional guardrails in this, but also how important was it for you from the jump to maybe not tell a story that was primarily or essentially rooted in trauma first?
That's the heart of it, man. That's 100% my goal. After I think I spent a full calendar year trying to force my way through trauma in order to put down everything that I could into the big giant memoir. And it was especially, I think it was the winter of 2018 or 2019.
I think 2018. And I just remember just being like, my body became physically beat up from the act. And I was just falling apart. And I remember I read this line shortly after that period in Mary Carr's The Art of Memoir. She said, like 10 reasons, it was like towards the beginning, 10 reasons why you shouldn't write a memoir. It's like this listicle thing inside the book. And one of them was like, if you think like writing memoirs is a substitute for therapy, like stop right now, because it will not do that for you. And as soon as I read that, I immediately realized like what I was trying to do. And I was trying to simultaneously heal myself by like writing about my deepest pains in long form, like explicit detail, A to Z. And also like in a way trying to like further my writing with that. But it's really hard to do that if what you're writing is too painful for you to read again. And after you write it, it puts you into a depressive episode for a week, 2 weeks, you know? So having done that enough times, it forced me to realize, like, first of all, like the long history of the voyeuristic expectation of largely white audiences to read our trauma, to kind of almost get off on it in a weird way, and the expectation for us to perform that trauma. It then became like this act of self-love, communal love, and in a small way, revolution. I hesitate to use that term, but like in a small way, a revolutionary act to prevent myself from like just giving them what they wanted, you know, whoever they are, you know.
So at what point in the process did you decide on the multi-layered format of the book? Or was that kind of always the goal, where it's going to be like multi-voice, multi-genre, multidisciplinary? Was that always the thing, or were you in a draft phase and decided to kind of filter some of that work in?
Well, my process is mostly generative. I'm very weak when it comes to editing and revision. They're not my strong suits, but I'm grateful that creating writing is never really been a big challenge for me, which is a problem in of itself, because now you have thousands of pages and you don't know what to do with them. But as far as like the format itself, I kind of stumbled onto it. I remember I was sitting at my favorite coffee shop, which has now burned down, in Northeast Minneapolis, and I just asked myself a question while I was doing my just regular, like, go to the coffee shop, get some coffee, you know, vibe out and just write to write with no expectation. And I asked myself a question, and then I answered the question, and then I just kept going. And then like the biggest challenge for me was trying not to define the project while I was in it. I didn't want to put any limitations or expectations on it. I just tried to be open to the idea of what was happening for as long as I could. And gratefully I was able to sustain that for like, I think like 2 or 3 months. And then I was also taking a class with Doug at the time, and we were exploring a lot of like cross-genre stuff, and questioning like ideas of genre and where exactly does the line fall between all this other stuff. So that was happening. And then another aspect is like, I'm into like different types of art, and I'm engaged by different types of art, from music to photography to every type of writing to the dialogue in a movie or a TV show that I watch on repetition. And so like a friend of mine once told me, like, he was like, in your essays, you're always trying to cram everything about you into the essay, and it's always trying to go in all these different places. And that's not like a flex or anything. That's just like me saying like that's how my mind works. And so it only made sense to add different layers to the project. And then as the project developed through the publication process, then different elements came out. Doing a Freedom of Information Act request on myself to get my original immigration documents and scanning those and putting those strategically throughout the piece, throughout the book, to tell a competing story of like how difficult it was for me to get my citizenship. Even though I was a citizen since like 2001, I didn't actually get my like acknowledgement until like 2016 or 2017, something crazy like that, and just being denied multiple times. So it's like this other story of like how we're alienated while we're here and how we're not really here while we're here. And then the photography, you know, that came in, my own photos and like pictures that one of my close friends took of me back in the day in Seattle. She was into film photography. And just, yeah, it just made sense, because it was like there's something missing. I want to add more, because that's how I'm always approaching things.
How do you know though, it's one thing to say, okay, like my brain works this way, and therefore the essay is essentially a playground in which you know, the architecture is of my own making, and it's like I have a container for it. But how do you know in the process when you hit a breaking point of an essay containing too much, or the essay becoming kind of more, and this didn't happen in the book, and so I'm asking mostly out of curiosity for my own self, like how do you self-edit yourself out of the essay becoming kind of like a meandering thought experiment?
Yeah. For me, it's a matter of length. I have a sweet spot for essays, like between like 700 to like 1200 words is like my sweet spot, like that I can wrap my mind around an essay, write it for usually about like 20 minutes of writing gets that amount of words. And then if it's like, if the emotional feel of the process of writing it is like there, like then it'll come out as this cohesive unit. But if it turns into something longer, that's a lot harder for me to wrap my mind around, because I lose interest, and also I get like overwhelmed by the amount of details that I have to keep track of. So generally for me, it's length, and it's also like feel. If it feels like a one-hitter quitter, like just bang it out and get it done type of deal, that's a lot easier for me to understand. Yeah, but I've also had, I remember I was just looking at this document last night actually. It's like 50 pages, and it's pretty much like one really long essay that goes in like follows a specific memory path of like me leaving America to go back to Somalia, and then living there for a few years, going to Kenya and coming back to America. And I just remember it was during Ramadan, so I was like waking up for the pre-dawn suhoor, to eat my meal for the day, to begin the fasting. And right after I ate was like the only time I had really good energy, because it's really hard to do that while you're fasting. And so I would just sit there like 4 or 5 in the morning, which I never do in real life, but Ramadan. And it just started that way, and then it sustained itself. And that's the one thing I've noticed is like, if a project sustains itself, that is the biggest indicator for me that something is like working, and it's not like going all over the place. But if I lose interest in it, that means that it's too many things happening to keep track of, and that it's probably like overly ambitious.
Yeah, gosh, I think about, it's funny you say that about Ramadan, because I do always think like the way that I live my life during that 30 days or so in terms of structure is just like unlike the way I live my life in any other point. You know what I mean? Where it's like I'll be up at like 5:30 or 4:30 in the morning, like going on a run, and then like, it's just like, that's not how I'm living. And it's wild because it's wild because oftentimes at the end of the month I'm like, it's wild that I can do that, but I ain't doing that shit. You know what I mean? This year I was like waking up at like 4:30 in the morning, going on runs, cooking like sustainable meals for the day. At the end of the month, I was like, damn, I could really do that every day if I wanted to. But then I was like, I ain't doing that every day though.
Yeah, but it's funny. There's always that moment, like 2 weeks into it, and you're in the flow, you're in the zone. You're like, you know what, my life, I'm gonna change my life. I'm just gonna continue my life like this. But as soon as Eid comes around, you hit that big Eid meal, and you take that Eid nap, and it's like, yeah, bro, I'm going back to my slothful ways. I'm good.
But I do love, I mean, not to go down a Ramadan rabbit hole, but I do love that like second week clarity where it's like, I'm gonna change my life. It's one of those things that like, I don't know, not to be too flippant with the metaphor, but it is like when you like meet someone who you like really think you could build with, and you're like, I'm gonna change my life for this person. And you're like, do I really want to change my life for this person? I mean, I've been doing Ramadan for like over 2 decades now, and I ain't really changed my life once too much, but it's still the journey,
It's a process.
Now that you're on the other side of the, like sometimes I think about writing a personal book, and there's this terror that comes on the other side of it. When, at least for me, like when I realize that people are gonna read it, and I know this book's been out for a few months now, so you've maybe gotten over this, but now that it's kind of like living, breathing in the world, do you have any kind of moments where you spend time with it and you think, I would have done this differently if I could do it again? Or are you one of those people who's really satisfied when you're done, and you're satisfied with the being done?
Yeah, you know, the wonderful thing about being autistic is it comes with memory issues. So I tend to forget a lot of things, including my sibling's birthday, but also like what I wrote. So like someone asked me like, what's your favorite part of the book, or like what passage do you remember? I'm like, I don't remember at all. I would have to open it, and I might, you know, but like once it's out of my hands, like I'm good. I'm satisfied. Like just the process of getting it out there was so overwhelming and challenging. Even though like my publisher, Really Serious Literature, like they did an amazing job and helped me through the process. Like I couldn't ask for a better situation. But like, you know, I have executive function difficulties. So, you know, things of that nature really bog me down. I'm not answering your question, but like,
you are in a way.
word. I think my thing is like, I don't, I always tell people like, yo, read this book. If you like it and you want to share some good comments with me, fantastic. If you have any questions about the book, please don't ask me. If you have any like constructive criticism about the book, please don't tell me. Cause like, I'm a very sensitive person. I really don't need that energy in my life, you know? So people are often taken aback by that, because it's like, well, you wrote this, it's out in the world. Like we should be able to, you know, ask you questions about it and challenge you. And I'm like, no, like I think of writing, the act of writing as self-care and self-love, but like the act of sharing writing, I think of that as like a generosity. I think of that as like a gift. So if somebody came to your house and came with their hand in their head, they had a nice present for you, would you sit there and ask them questions? Where did you buy this, you know, present? What did you mean by it? Like you wouldn't think to question that, but for some reason people think to do that with writing, even if they have like good intentions. And that's always bothered me about it. Especially as someone who's like extremely sensitive to criticism of any kind. So I don't really worry about it. I don't think about it. I did do this thing the other day where I like presented for some high school kids at a Somali charter school, and it was like 100% Somali kids in the school, in the class. And, you know, I did a little presentation by my book, and then we did a little writing exercise, free write. You know, I gave them some motivational advice. If you're going to do drugs, please stop them at some point. It would be great. And like just being realistic, don't do drugs. Well, I know the nature of the world. And so like afterwards, like I had this like prerequisite. Like when I came in, I was telling the teacher, I was like, yo, please, like, don't let them ask me questions. Like, I just want to share this and be on my way. And, you know, and like, hopefully it helps them or whatever. And the teacher was like, hey, we have like 5 minutes left. Do you mind if they ask you a couple of questions? And my happy-go-lucky, eager to please ass was like, sure, why not? Yeah, I was in a good mood, you know, the coffee was hitting. And immediately, because there's like, you know, I deal with like my history of addiction and dealing drugs and all this other crazy shit in the book. Immediately, these 16-year-old kids, so how much money do you make selling drugs? What kind of drugs do you do? And I'm like, yo, guys, what's going on? And I'm like, oh, I'm not comfortable talking about that. 3 more drug questions. I got pissed. I was like, you know what? Wrapping up my books, I'm gonna go home and possibly cry. And I told him that. Respect boundaries. And I was in a bad mood for like the rest of the day. But like that goes to show me, like, even if children, you know, they're not children, but like even if kids ask me questions about, it's like the act of writing itself is what saves me. Sharing it is something that I've learned to do over the years. But the writing itself is the ultimate goal for me. Sit down with a nice London fog in my favorite coffee shop, hands me my favorite barista, and I got my camera and I got my books and I got my headphones and I got my laptop and something to scribble with, and an eagle feather that I found from a recent trip in Africa, like sitting in my notebook staring at me, and I'm just writing, and I could do that for hours. That is literally heaven on earth for me. That is the beginning and the end of the goal for me, like the process for me. That's absolutely what I cherish most about it, you know.
So how did you come then? This opens up a thing for me. Then how did you come to the decision to put out a book at all? You know?
Yeah. I felt like it was necessary, this book. I felt like I didn't have a choice, because I've been thinking more and more about the concept of community, and seeing, you know, everything I went through, seeing it happen now, but even more pronounced in our communities, especially in like minoritized communities and Black communities and immigrant communities and communities of people who are of minority faiths, you know. But just the ways that we're being pulled apart and smashed within ourselves by these times and the climate crisis and all the political crises and the dwindling resources and everything else that's combining, and how children were in like middle school, high school, are more hopeless than any children that age have ever been in the history of humanity. And like seeing kids who are 14, 15, 16 overdosing off of a Percocet pill they thought was a Percocet pill, but happened to be bought off the street, and it was laced with fentanyl, and it's the last Percocet pill they ever took, and that's it. And it was the first time they experimented with it. And just seeing that amount of like destruction, and like specifically, I live in Minneapolis. I don't know how I found myself here, but this is like the Somali capital of Somali people outside of Somalia, and so like the issues that my community is facing here are like extremely acute. And I've volunteered at like rehabs and recovery and treatment places here that are specifically geared towards young Somali people, and the cultural disconnect between our parents' generation and us is still there, and that disconnect is even there with like the children of young Somali American people who were born and raised in America, like their children. There's a disconnect between, because there's always a generational disconnect. And so just seeing that all of the problems that we've had because of that civil war and because of the fracturing that happened, not just between our people, but within ourselves, and the various traumas that we've carried from there to here that were never addressed and that are still like on our backs and are being passed down from generation to generation. And on top of that, being compounded by the racial terrors that they're experiencing that their parents might not have any idea about. And they're doing this negotiation between what does it mean to be African versus African American? What am I really Black? Like, how Black am I? What does it mean for me to be Muslim in this state? And all this other crazy shit that's happening. Like, it is leading to people dying and feeling like they want to die. And so I wrote this book as an act of survival for myself. I literally was just trying to make it through another semester of the MFA program. I was just feeling a lot of pressure there. But when I wanted it to be out there and I started looking at it and I shared it with a couple of like people that was close to me, and I started getting more into the community and seeing what we were facing, I realized like this needs to be in the hands of the people who need it, because they can see that no matter how dark the road gets, like there's got to be some type of hope. You know what I'm saying? Like if somebody like me can go from smoking meth and selling coke and in jail and in psych wards and suicidal and all these other things, watching friends overdose and never think I would make it past 25, to, you know what I'm saying, like sober and like living a comfortable life by the grace of God, and like, you know what I'm saying, in a graduate program and like writing and following my dreams. Like, I don't take credit for that. I mean, I take credit for the hard work I've done, but I absolutely give credit to God for having my back, and for my family and for my people, like for pushing me and always like cherishing me and loving me, even when I didn't cherish or love myself. And so like, it felt like a continuation of my journey, of the ways that writing saved me and my people saved me, to try and give that back to my people and to give that back to writing any way I could.
Great answer. Thank you for that. Yeah, I guess I'm gonna jump to audience questions then. We got one, and hopefully Dan said we got time for one more, so hopefully somebody will drop another one in. But this is a good question, especially because you talked about editing and sensitivity to criticism, which I dig. Someone asked, do you have any first readers that you trust or rely on?
Hell no. Sort of. Actually, like, I really send a lot of my stuff to Kathryn Nuernberger and Doug Kearney, who you read a poem of his. I send it to them just to kind of read. I don't really ask them for feedback. Sometimes they give me, we talk about it, but it's never necessarily feedback relating to what they thought about the piece. Or Kate is really good at like analyzing what the piece is doing, and that helps me because I'm not good at analyzing literature at all. That helps me understand the piece a little bit better. And then Doug, I'll send him a freaking manuscript of poems, and we'll come back and we'll talk for 15 minutes and end up talking about everything, including that and everything but that. But it will help me in a lot of ways, So yeah, Doug and Kate are probably the only two people I send stuff to. Yeah. But I don't really rely on first readers or outside opinion or feedback. The whole process is kind of like really self-contained, which is limiting, but it's also kind of the only thing that works for me.
Yeah, you gotta write a way it works for you. Gotta find a way it works for you and follow it. Any other audience questions? We have Dan said we got one more. So anybody want to drop one more, lighthearted or otherwise? I guess I'll ask the last one, and it's mostly music based. What were you listening to when working on the book? Did you have a playlist, a soundtrack? Did you have any consistent sounds you returned to?
Oh man, terrible memory. I have no idea. It was, you know what? It was probably just stuff that I've been listening to for forever. I tend to listen to the same stuff over and over. But usually like a very reliable song that I've listened to a million times. Lately I've been on this kick of like just not listening to stuff, excuse me, not listening to stuff with lyrics. I've been on like kind of like neo acid jazz type stuff. This one dude, Alpha Mist, out of the UK. He makes some amazing music. And just vibing off of whatever Spotify suggests after that. Like when I'm in a writing mode nowadays, I find it's a lot easier to listen to just something with like a nice, super jazzy, super, you know, like sort of hip hoppy like beat, but that doesn't have the lyrics, because the words can, yeah, they can just, I might find myself typing the lyrics verbatim, and I'm like, yo, you're not a real writer, you're just copy paste.
It's tough to do language in, language out. I find that to be challenging.
Absolutely.
I guess I'll take this one in. Can someone ask, can you give advice on young writers overcoming imposter syndrome?
Man, just I guess believing in your own voice to the best of your ability. Like writing as if you're writing to your closest friend. Trying to get away from writing as you think writing should look or sound like. And as far as some of my friends have been writing for decades longer than me, and they still struggle with that. And that was a hard thing for me to come to terms with. At a certain point, it is part of the process, that fear. You know, I spent like 3 years constantly throwing bars into my writing, like, you're a fake. It's only a matter of time before they find out. I'm like, yeah, you're right, bro. But like, you know, just kind of just accept it, you know, for what it is, but try not to let it overwhelm you. I think I don't really have good advice for that, because you know, it still comes up.
Yeah, it's ongoing.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I really love the book. I'm glad I got to spend some time talking to you about it. And I'm glad that it's been able to live in the world really effectively and generously. So thank you for having me. Thanks to Writers and Books, and thanks to everybody for kicking it with us. Oh, wait, did someone put another thing in the Q&A? Oh. Someone asked, how can we help get this book to the hands of young Black men? Do you have an answer for that?
Buy the book. Buy and distribute it. I don't know. If you can like reach out to your local middle and high schools, and ask them if they can get the book in their library. Reach out to your local libraries. Go to local teen centers, things of that nature. Yeah, post about it on your social media. Yeah, just wherever you have a connection with your community, try and get out, spread out the word for it.
Yeah, tap in with your people is always the best answer. Thank you all again. This was a real pleasure. I love the book. It was good talking with you, fam.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it, bro.
Thank you so much, Said. Thank you, Hanif. Really appreciate it. It was such a great conversation. And thank you for sharing your work with us. I say buy the book. The link is in the chat. I want to thank our funders here and bring those up. You'll be able to see a video of this reading as well as our previous readings at our website, wab.org. You can see our upcoming programs as well. And I want to thank everyone for coming, and have a great night.